Bonjour. Hey, I'm Miss Holly again. Welcome to week 2. This is the live lesson 3 recording. If you missed your live lecture on Tuesday or Wednesday, this is where you should be to complete the work that we did together on the live team call. So this live lesson, the purpose of this is to continue to practice and understand and get comfortable with what is expected of us behaviorally as well as academically. But we are also now going to start to talk about science. We're going to talk about chemistry. We're going to start to think and mold our minds to understanding what it means to be a scientist and what it means to think using our scientific brain. So I have a set of reminders that I'm going to go through here in a second. We're then going to do a warm-up tank check. And then what is a scientist is the activity that we're mainly going to be focusing on today. So as some reminders, the work from last week was technically all due on Sunday, but during NTI, there is a certain amount of cushion for you to get things done and turned in. So many of you have been turning in assignments over the last couple days. Please keep doing that and get that work into me. As you do so, be aware that I am spending a bunch of time commenting and grading your assignments on Google Classroom, Edpuzzle, and Padlet. So please take the time to go check out the comments that I put, the questions that I asked, because I'm putting some effort into creating a little bit of a digital dialogue between you and I that we don't get to have since we're not in class. I am working on updating grades. My Infinite Campus was not working appropriately, but it should be good now. So I will start putting those in the next couple days. There is late work is accepted. There will be a small penalty, but nothing that is going to absolutely tank your grade. So please keep turning in work and keep getting things done. And again, another reminder is that if you have already viewed this live lesson, if you were with me on Tuesday or Wednesday, then you don't need to do this. All right. So this is not for you if you are watching this video recorded, but when you do come to a live class, we're following a 2 mutes and a boot. If we cannot get our behavior together and I have to mute you twice, I will remove you from the room. If I give you a second to kind of think and go, oh, I wasn't doing something right and Miss Holly wasn't into that, and so she kicked me out, and I let you come back in, I hope that you can then make the changes to behave accordingly in our classroom. If you can't, then you're going to be booted for good. I'm sorry that's the way it has to be, but I really, really expect this not to be a huge issue. So just keep that in mind. Remember all of our classroom expectations about being safe, responsible, respectful, prepared, and here. I want to focus specifically on respectful because there is a new document that I have created for a chat until our team chat is better functioning, because right now it doesn't function. So what I have created is a document where you are going to be able to ask questions about a lesson, share ideas about a lesson, comment and correspond with someone else if they say something, as well as a space to just continue to ask other questions if you that may not be related directly to the lesson at that moment, but to the larger course or NTI. This will be made available in the important information area. And it's more for us to be able to live chat during a live lesson. But this is also a space if there's something that you feel is valuable to add, please go and do so. Thank you guys so far for all of your work. I have been super impressed with everyone's work ethic and the quality of work that we've produced so far. So keep it up. So your warm-up for today is a tank check. So remember, we think of our energy and emotional tank as a gas tank. So if we're feeling really good, energized, excited, positive, you're going to be full. If you're feeling not so great, you might be empty. Remember, there's lots of ways to fill tanks. So getting a compliment makes you feel good. That fills your tank. Having a really yummy breakfast, getting enough sleep the night before, just getting out of bed and feeling really good about yourself, right? That fills your tank. Emptying your tank, though, might be not having breakfast or having not slept very well or getting in a fight with one of your friends or your parent or your partner, or having somebody say something mean to you. Those are things that empty your tank. So right now, I just ask that you tell me, where is your tank? Great. So the lesson for today is we're going to think about, what does a scientist look like, act like, think like? What the heck is a scientist? So this is valid and important because it's part of my goal as a teacher is for you to walk out of my classroom as a person, as a student that can think scientifically, a human that can engage in conversations, challenge each other, and work productively, as chemists who can then use chemistry concepts to explain phenomena, and then as 21st century adults who can engage in a digital learning environment. So for us to be able to do that, we really have to hone in and make sure we understand what the heck is a scientist. So my first question to you is just like, I want you to brainstorm some terms of, what does a scientist look like, act like, think like? What are some words that you would use to describe a scientist? Please record those now. All right, so what you are going to do now is, now that you've kind of brainstormed and came up with this big list of what a scientist might do, how they might think, what their just characteristics are, we have begun the process of creating what I call a digital graffiti board. So on the Padlet, which you can find on Google Classroom, I would like you to go and I want you to add some terms or images that you came up with that describe a scientist. I don't want to see any double words. So if the words you are thinking someone has already posted, if you scroll around and see it, you can like their post, smash that heart button. But I want you to then think outside the box and see if you can come up with another term. So to take you there, to show you what that looks like, here is an example over here. So make sure that if you are not logged in, that you put your name so I know who said it, and add a term or a image or both that describes how a scientist thinks. So snaps the third period here is my example. Here were some words that they came up with. All right, that is your first big assignment here. So now that you've added to this big list and you've kind of started to think about what a scientist does, I want you to, in 2 to 3 sentences, describe what a scientist is. How do they act? What do they do? How do they think? Describe them in full terms. Now, it's interesting. In class, we do this activity where we draw a scientist out, and we start to notice some trends about our scientists. So in your brain, when you think about what a scientist looks like, what do you picture? Do you see a specific type of person, a specific gender, a specific race? What do they look like? What do you kind of notice? So it's interesting because every single year in every single class, some stereotypes about scientists kind of start to pop out. There's some assumptions about what a scientist is and what they do. Okay, how many of you thought of Bill Nye the Science Guy, or thought of some guy with goggles and a white coat holding up a beaker? Or how many of you thought of the old crazy mad scientist running experiments with his wild flowing hair, right? Or thought of some guy in the lab with his goggles and his jacket and all of his tools, right? So those people are scientists, but that's not what every scientist looks like, especially in the world that we live in now. So there are scientists that are Black. There are scientists that have disabilities. There are scientists that are women. There are scientists that are Hispanic, that are African American, that are European, that are Asian. There are scientists that have red hair, that have natural curly hair. There are scientists that are religious, that wear a hijab. There are scientists that come from tiny islands in the middle of nowhere. And there's scientists that come from the most populous countries in the entire world. So the reality is that anyone can be a scientist, because all it takes to be a scientist is to think in a certain way. You are even a scientist. Just because you can say that you've never been good at science or you don't like science, that doesn't mean that you're not a scientist. So I hope that you've thought that or hope that you've thought or you've seen some things that make you think, oh, I can be a scientist, or I do think like a scientist, or maybe I'm more like a scientist than I ever thought I was. So what you have left is this assignment, number 8. So based on the Padlet list that we came up with, or any of those brainstorm terms that you came up with when you were thinking about what a scientist looks like, does, thinks like, acts like, those characteristics, I want you to choose 2 of those characteristics that also describe you. And what you're going to do is you're going to write a response using this specific setup, okay, to explain how you are like a scientist because you have those 2 similar characteristics. You'll start with, I am like a scientist because, and then say those 2 characteristics that describe you. I am one of those characteristics because, and then provide personal evidence. Do that for the second characteristic, and then provide evidence that proves you are like a scientist. Is the final sentence, that's stating that this evidence supports and proves that I am like a scientist. So your tasks are to make sure you have the Edpuzzle preview done, that you've added to the Padlet, that you have completed the reflection question about in what ways are you like a scientist, and that you have watched this recorded video for lesson 3. So tell me thumbs up, thumbs down, somewhere in the middle. How well did you like this lesson? And then head on over to Google Classroom to make sure that you have your week 2 assignments all done and finished up. Thank you guys for your participation today and your effort. I will see you for your next lesson.